right. Let's get started with our Ready, Set, Scale webinar. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dave List with Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships, or NEEP. Um, be talking about the heat pump market today in the Northeast. We NEEP recently completed a market assessment of the heat pump market in the Northeast. We'll be presenting some of the overview of that and getting into a panel conversation with a number of different market actors from the region. Um, Next slide. So just a quick antitrust statement. We often convene industry players and manufacturers, and this is just a reminder that if conversations come up about anything that sort of contravenes the any of this competition law, that we would stop that conversation. Next slide. So for folks that are joining within the Northeast and beyond, NEEP is a regional energy efficiency organization. We are one of a number of RIOs, as we like to call ourselves, around the country. We are working to make our region's homes and buildings and businesses and communities um, places with efficient, affordable, low carbon, resilient places to live, work, and play. We do that through regional collaboration and through various market transformation um, strategies and activities. Next slide. Big thank you to the foundation and federal funders who make a lot of our work possible. Next slide. And we have a very robust network of allies that we would like to recognize and thank. Thank you to all of these, all of our allies. Thank you. Next slide. And as well as our state partners who are really the committed actors throughout our region that engage and participate um, in a number of our different initiatives. Next slide. Okay, so like I said, we're going to spend a little bit of time. I will be giving an overview of a recent assessment report that we conducted parts of last year and into this year. We'll have Grace Helser from HARDI, who will also be providing some information about a new sales data program that HARDI is making available. And then we'll be inviting a number of, again, different market actors from our region to do a roundtable discussion about some of the findings from our market assessment and some of the perspectives that they bring to the market going forward. And then we will wrap up. Next slide. Okay, so in diving into the market assessment, I think the next slide has sort of what we were really trying to do with this was to kind of get a lay of the land, understand the current residential air source heat pump market, and you can see sort of in that the sections here, we were trying to understand sort of the state of market actors that play in this market, trying to size the current heat pump and broader residential HVAC equipment market, trying to understand latest installed costs for this equipment, understand the current program activity space around programs in the region. And then sort of the second main objective was really around the market development opportunities going forward. What do regional actors really think will be the ways of continuing to drive growth in this market going forward? And that's really some of the the interesting parts. All right, so to the market sizing piece, I've got a couple of different slides, and this really starts to paint the picture of where this market has come over the last decade. And so this really reflects the really significant growth we saw from 2013 to 2021. This is only reflects the New York and New England market, so it's not the complete Northeast Mid-Atlantic market, but it does reflect that sort of northern sub region. But it was really, some of the best data that we have, and you can see that this market for a number of years, starting sort of 2017, was growing 20 to 30% year over year, up to almost 250,000 units in 2021. And we just sort of put those sales in context there with where furnace sales were in the region, in the same sub-region. So kind of on par with furnace sales in that 2021 timeframe. Certainly more than boilers, and kind of a similar number to central AC systems. So definitely a period of strong growth in the Northeast. And so we lost the data that we had access to through 2021 was no longer available. So we were really trying to kind of fill in how the market was progressing 2021 through 2024. This is just a look at more of the national market that we were able to pull forward, and really just shows that, through some of those, really the effects of the COVID, and sort of the broader economy, we saw this slowdown 2020 from 2021 into 2022, and then a pretty big drop off in national HVAC sales shipments down into 2023. Next slide. So we spent quite a bit of time kind of leveraging a number of different data sources to help paint this picture of what was happening in the region from 2021 through 2023. And this, you see a number of the data sources that we utilize to sort of triangulate where we thought this market, the Northeast market. And in this case, we actually are including our complete region. And this is really from Washington, D.C. up through Maine. So the broader Northeast market. We utilized that historic HARDI sales data that DNR used to administer. We utilized that AHRI national shipment data. One of the important data points is that we use program data in some cases as a proxy for the growth trends within certain states. And we also used REX data to understand kind of current installed base in certain states. And so let's jump back. Sorry, I just wanted to. So we did estimate that we saw a dip in total sales of HVAC equipment in the market over those same years. So similar trend as the national level. But I think the positive story is that the share of the market of residential HVAC systems actually were increasing during that time. So from 25% to 29 to 32%. And the market share number is a metric that a number of states in the region, through the NESCAUM, through an agreement with NESCAUM, is targeting a 65% market share goal in 2030. So this 32 number suggests that we are about halfway towards that 2030 goal. Next slide. So I just wanted, one of the takeaways was that we spent a lot of time trying to estimate the size of the market. We are really excited about some emerging opportunities that Grace will speak to a little bit about the about some about ways of understanding this market as far as sales go going forward. Next slide. We used a number of different reports and sources to estimate costs here, and we broke that down looking at whole home centrally ducted, whole home ductless, uh, centrally ducted with sort of a dual fuel with a furnace, and then just a single zone ductless, um, and found that you can see that some of those whole home solutions are in that a very there's quite a bit of range in terms of the cost. The average, if you look at sort of the average high and average low, we're looking at around 20,000, sort of 20,000 across a number of those different applications, and about 7,500 for the single zone ductless. Next slide. All right. In looking at the world of programs in the Northeast, we have a robust landscape of programs. We have a lot of a pretty some diversity in the incentives. We have sort of a smaller end range of incentives, $250 per piece of equipment, all the way up to $10,000 for air source heat pumps. We definitely see that a lot of programs are tiered, with some of the higher, more generous incentives uh, being provided for whole home systems, or systems that are covering all or most of the heating load of a home. Seeing this sort of trend of moving from a per capacity incentive to a per project model. And on the LMI offerings, we're definitely seeing a kind of a co-promotion, or a connection with weatherization with the installation of heat pumps. Next slide. All right, so we pivoting from sort of the market characterization to the market development opportunities. These are kind of the main buckets, and we did a fair amount of interviewing of key market actors to understand, again, really what are the opportunities going forward to continue to drive growth in the market. And we landed on a series here, and I'm going to try to quickly go through each of these in their own slides so that we can get going with the rest of our program. So next slide. All right, so promoting a broad range of heat pump applications. This is looking at the opportunities to do both whole home and partial displacement heat pumps. Both provide a pretty significant opportunity for growth. And we also flagged an opportunity to transition residential cooling equipment, air conditioning equipment to heat pump equipment. Next slide. A lot, obviously, the economics continue to be a big area of focus and opportunity, both to improve the economic value proposition, both from an upfront cost perspective and from an operational cost perspective. A number of kind of a subset of customers have some of the higher economic value propositions. So let's make sure we go after and promote, especially to those customers. The financing space, the space around electric rates has got a lot of attention, and the transparency is also seen as an opportunity to help uh, cost compression. Next slide. This is pretty straightforward in terms of driving consumer demand and satisfaction. This is really continuing to deliver education and information to consumers through kind of a variety of marketing and engagement strategies. really getting the word out. There's still a lack of awareness and understanding of the benefits and just the general um, awareness of the technology. Next slide. All right, growing and enhancing workforce. This again has kind of a two-prong piece, two pieces to it, both in respect to making sure that we're bringing new talent to the market and making sure that we're kind of filling the pipeline with new workers, and then also at the same time, this technology does present some new best practices when it comes to designing and sizing and installing. And we really need to continue to drive those best practices into the existing workforce. Next slide. Program design. Definitely a lot of, I'd say this first bullet sort of encapsulates a lot of it in terms of aligning and simplifying rebate qualification and just the availability of incentives over a period of time, making that more consistent for a lot of different market actors. The opportunity to engage the supply chain through midstream incentives seen as a big opportunity. Making sure that we're really simplifying participation for LMI customers, um, and making sure that we're getting the engagement and support across a lot of different communities. Next slide. All right, so I think this is my last one on the opportunities. This is really around the adoption and implementation of complementary policies. So this idea of setting market targets so that we are continue to stay on pace for these kinds of adoption targets, making sure that we have transparency in how tracking and understanding how we're making progress towards some of those goals, but making sure that we have stakeholder engagement during the development and adoption of these of policies, and that runway also being an important element to make sure that the market actors have sort of time to meet whatever those regulations or policies might be. And then lastly, that seeking consistency across regional partners to ease that regulatory compliance burden. All right. I think I went through those pretty quickly, but I think I had to catch up, try to catch up a little bit. So next slide. Okay, great. So I'm going to welcome Grace Helser to join from HARDI, Heating, Air Conditioning, and Refrigeration Distributors International, and she's going to talk a little bit about I mentioned the sales data program and the availability of that for stakeholders. So I welcome Grace to join us.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, and thank you to everybody at NEEP for having me. I will try and run through this quickly and not take up too much time, but we can go to the next slide. So my name is Grace Helser. I'm a research analyst at HARDI, and I have been collecting all of this data over the past couple of years. So a little bit about HARDI. If you don't already know who we are an association for HVACR distributors and manufacturers, service vendors as well. So our mission is to make the wholesale distributor the channel of choice for HVACR products from manufacturers and contractors, as opposed to other channels like retail or direct from manufacturer. So we have a ton of wholesale companies and manufacturing associate companies across the company or across the US, and we gather about 75% of the dollar value that is passed through distribution. So all that's to say is we have really good data. Nobody else is collecting this data. And I want to talk a little bit about this new program that we have. So we can move to the next slide. So here's some key points that highlight our unitary market intelligence. So at the start of this program, we were just collecting unitary data, which, ACs, heat pumps, and furnaces, but now that has expanded to all product sales. So when we are contacting these distributors, these HARDI members to get their data, we are asking them for all product sales data. So that goes all the way from ACs to coils to boilers to heat pumps to water heaters, all that great stuff. We have been building this from the ground up. We used to run this program with DNR, and now we run it through Cometrics. And so we've been rebuilding it over the past 2 years. It's grown a lot. It's still in the beginning phases, I will say, but we have about 60 plus large distributors that are participating in the program right now, and our goal is to get at least up to 100. But we did just recently get to this point where we have the dashboards live for our participating distributors last month. And so now subscriptions to that for you all, if you're interested, will be available very shortly. So we are gathering product data on state and urban areas, zip code data, down to refrigerants, different efficiency levels, and all these different product categories. We can go to the next slide. So subscriptions are available for purchase. It's going to be an annual subscription. And down here, I included a little snapshot of our dashboards. Now, these are brand new, and this is what a distributor view is going to look like. So your view would be a little bit different. It obviously wouldn't have the My Growth section for you to benchmark, but we are reporting growth rates of all these product categories down to the state level where available. And I say where available because we are requiring at least 3 distributors in a state to make that public. But if the state specifically isn't public, then the region is. And obviously, we are still working to build that participation, so it's going to keep growing. But yeah, if you have any questions, we can move on to the next slide. I have my email and the HARDI website linked. Feel free to reach out to me or ask any questions here.
Well done, Grace. I know that's quick to run through in 3 minutes. So thank you for being so to the point. I know,
Thank
Grace,
you.
I know a number of, I just have just a question that we've been discussing about the shareability or the ability to make some of the information public versus, the subscription really allows a user to have that data and see that data, but restricted from really turning that around and making that public. Do you have plans to make some of the data public or allow subscribers or users to make some of that data public?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently we are, as I mentioned, still in the early phases, and everybody at NEEP knows that we're working through that currently in our terms of use. So some of the data is going to be able to be made public. Currently, we're targeting annual growth rates. And, the subscribers of the data are going to have a much more granular use of that and granular view. And there will also be, I want to say this, don't take this with a grain of salt because I need to check. Things are changing every day, but units available for purchase for private use, internal use. So it is going to be some aspects made public. I actually just received the terms of use document from my boss at HARDI right before we jumped on this call, and I haven't been able to go through all the specifics of it. But yeah, it's moving along. Not all of it will be able to be made public originally, but I assume further down the line when the project gets more robust and we have a bunch more participation, what's going to be able to be shared will get more granular as well.
Great. Thank you for that. And I think, the slides will be shared. I know, Grace, and your we can drop your email into the chat as well if folks have questions about the subscription program. We're excited to engage with HARDI and with other partners to have a way of tracking this market more closely. So thanks for your work on this.
Oh,
All
thank
right.
you.
Okay. So let us invite Dana and Emily and Melanie, please join me at the virtual table for our discussion. I think we're doing okay on time. But why don't I let you all just very briefly introduce yourselves before I jump in. It's great to have three folks from different corners of this market joining us. But I'll let Dana. Why don't you start us off?
Sure. I'm Dana Fischer with Mitsubishi Electric US. Great to see all the participants on the call and be a part of this conversation. I'm the senior regulatory strategist for Mitsubishi Electric, and getting my fingers in as many different issues as I possibly can. So really great to see everybody here today.
Thanks, Dana. Melanie, you want to go next? Emily, do you want to jump in on the?
Yeah, I'll introduce myself while Melanie troubleshoots. Emily Levin, I'm the Policy and Program Director for Clean Buildings at NESCAUM, which stands for Northeast States for Coordinated Air Use Management. We support state environmental agencies, energy offices in tackling pollution from the building sector. So both climate pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, but also air pollution like NOx and ozone and particulate pollution, which is of increasing focus for states as they try to improve air quality and address climate change. And we'll see if Melanie can speak now. Oh no, yeah, I don't think we hear you, sorry.
It's okay. We'll get it sorted out. We'll let's jump into some questions and Melanie, you just troubleshoot as you can. It's all good. So our first couple of questions are really about the market, and my first question was sort of to Dana. We suggested that sort of we're seeing a little bit of a contraction of the market in those 2022, 2023 years. And, not speaking for necessarily the whole market, but from Mitsubishi's perspective, have we seen the market bounce back to kind of pre-dip levels, or are we still sort of building back to where we were? And you're muted.
We've seen a pretty good bounce back. I don't know if anybody on the call recalls this thing called the pandemic, but it really kind of impacted the whole marketplace. We saw a pretty steep increase in uptake in 21, 22, partly because people were really like, I'm at home, I might as well be comfortable in my home office. There was a lot of remote working. So I think there was a real trend to increase the availability of AC or upgrade HVAC systems during that period of time. 2023 was sort of the year when all the manufacturers caught up with their supply chain and made a ton of stuff, but the barns were already full. And it's also coincidentally when people were sort of, coming out of the pandemic and moving towards revenge travel and sort of broad spending in other categories besides durable goods in homes. So I think that's part of what we're seeing as a reflection in 2023. And then 2024 for us was sort of recovery back to and slightly above the 2022 levels. And I think that was the case for most of the industry, really a pretty welcome change from the drop in 23. And 25 is really proving to be much the same. I mean, there's a ton of uncertainty, obviously. And the tariffs are coming into play. I mean, there's been changes in pricing associated with the tariffs, but also with the transition to A2L refrigerants. So these are multiple factors, but it seems like consumers are sort of like pre-buying for anticipated elevated costs. So we're continuing to see sustained demand now, although it's sort of unclear as what's going to happen with elevated tariffs and how those costs might trickle into affect the installed costs that are included in this fabulous report that you guys have put together. I'll also admit that, of course, the last factor I'll mention is that with 25C now sunsetting at the end of this year, that's probably going to add a little bit of gas to this last 6 months. As people race to try and collect on that $2,000. So I think we'll see pretty solid 25. What happens next year is anybody's guess.
Thank you. Melanie, how's our audio? Maybe? No, it's all right. It's okay. We practiced this before. It was all working, and here we are. It's okay. No sweat. I'm going to jump over to Emily. I know I mentioned the multi-state NESCAUM agreement. It really brought sort of a tangible target heat pump adoption to the region. How are you hoping to support the progress from your member states?
Yeah, we're really excited to be working with states and also with NEEP on this effort. We set that goal because we felt like it was an area that states didn't have a lot of insight into and historically haven't necessarily had access to great data. So we're really excited about the HARDI data and other developing ability of states to actually gain insight into what's going on in the heat pump market in their state, which is really exciting. We have an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, that some of you might have seen with 10 states, well, 9 states plus the District of Columbia. That includes a number of Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states that have committed to meet this target and accelerate the transition to zero-emission residential buildings. We've been working over the past year or so with those states to develop a multi-state action plan to drive progress. And we are tracking towards releasing that plan in September, so stay tuned for that. But we're really excited. It's going to include recommendations for state actions across a range of policies and programs, everything from rate design to codes and standards, investments in equitable building electrification. It will really provide a menu of options for states. So every state's roadmap is going to look a little bit different to reach that 65% market share goal. But there are a lot of great strategies and opportunities that states can consider. And then we're going to be checking in annually on their progress to see how they're doing. Are they on track in terms of market adoption, and also how are they doing on adopting state actions? What are the key barriers? How can we support them in overcoming those barriers? So we're really excited that it'll create some framework to kind of see how states are doing and determine how we can support them in moving faster and more forward together. So again, that's going to be coming out in a couple of months. So we're really excited about that. And hopefully that will be a useful framework for others to use as well, that might be working with states.
Exciting. Fantastic. Melanie, audio check? Unfortunately, no. So one of the first opportunity areas that came up in that we present in the report is this opportunity to around the one-way air conditioner central AC market. Essentially, it's the same size as the heat pump market today, and the opportunity to shift some of those sales, some or if not all of those sales, to two-way heat pump products. So Dana, I was wondering sort of if you could provide some thoughts or some insights into that opportunity.
Yeah, no, thanks, Dave. It's going to be a challenging area to transition because in existing situations where somebody has a furnace and an AC unit and an outdoor condenser, they have those 3 parts. And if one thing goes wrong, one of those units fails, or the consumer wants to replace one of those things, that's sort of the lowest cost factors for them to replace that one component, whether it's the AC unit inside or outside or the furnace. And so it's really only when you really have an old system that you retrofit the whole thing. And of course, going to a new, or even trying to say, well, I want to put a heat pump on top, you'd have to change the condenser. And if you change the condenser, most of the time for manufacturers, you also have to change the indoor unit, particularly now as we transition to A2L systems, right? You can replace indoor and outdoor units, at least at this point, from a service perspective. In the future, it may be difficult to replace 410A outdoor units, but you're going to have to change the whole system to A2Ls at that future venture. But as long as people can maintain their systems with 410A, it's going to be a pretty big incremental cost to go to heat pumps relative to just sticking with AC. So it's a hurdle. I know a lot of people are focused on this, and there may be some policy moves to kind of incentivize it, but it's a little bit of a struggle. In some ways, it's actually less costly to just tear the whole thing out and just go all heat pump.
I have a follow-up, but we'll run through some more questions and come back to that one. So improving consumer economics, both upfront costs and operational costs, has been a long-standing market barrier. Emily, can you speak to where the region stands on addressing rising energy costs and their impact on heat pump adoption?
Yeah, I think we're all aware that this has been a challenging time with respect to rising costs. We've seen real spikes in electricity costs, also in some cases gas costs with the situation in Ukraine a couple of years ago. There have been a lot of supply chain constraints first due to COVID, and some of those are even now still working their way through the system. Now we're adding to that tariffs and other issues. Overall, we're just not keeping pace in the clean energy transition in the way we need to with the shift to renewable energy generation. So we're seeing all those supply chain constraints and interconnection delays kind of slowing, bringing new generation resources online, and that goes for both, offshore wind turbines where we've seen cancellations, but even things like turbines for natural gas plants, which are delayed now out into the late 2020s. So it's been very difficult to bring really any new generation sources online, and that's really creating some pressure on rates. And that is proving a challenge for electrification across the board. Even though converting to heat pumps and electric vehicles actually has potential to put downward pressure on rates because they can enable better use of the existing grid, they're actually spreading those costs across a larger rate base, particularly if you're using them intelligently, not at peak times. We have a lot of headroom to support electrification of heating before we start to get to really increasing peak demand and starting to shift from from summer peak to winter peak. ISO New England is not projecting that to happen until like 2034. So we're well away from having the adoption of heat pumps really creating a lot of new peak demand pressure in our system. And we actually can just get a lot more function out of our existing grid, which is great news. We don't actually need to bring all this new generation online to serve heat pumps. And yet we are still affected by the price pressure that we're seeing across these systems. And I mean, just this week, we saw another PJM capacity market, which affects the southern part of the Northeast region, the Mid-Atlantic states. More record high prices for capacity auctions. So it's all been a bit tricky. Bottom line, part of this needs to be solved at the grid level, and there's a lot of people working on that, trying to speed interconnection and find ways of bringing new resources online and, address these challenges around tariffs and supply chain issues. What we can do, those of us that work on the heating side, is really a big step is really new rate structures that encourage better utilization of the existing grid, encourage people, improve the economics for switching to heat pumps. Also, things like time of use rates that shift usage away from peak periods are really important. And that's something a lot of states are starting to work on. A lot of utilities are starting to work on. So maybe I'll just pause here to see if we can hear Melanie, because we'd love to hear her speak about some of what the Massachusetts utilities are doing on that front.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh my God. I am so sorry. I don't know what that was. I even had someone try to come
Melanie,
in and
no
help
sweat.
me. Okay.
Yeah, no, we could,
All right.
I
So,
can vouch for Melanie that we could hear her just before this call. So I'm not sure what happened there, but we all get those Zoom and Teams gremlins from time to time. So I'm sorry you were afflicted, but I'm glad you're back with us.
oh, thank you. Okay. So just very quickly, I'll introduce myself. My name is Melanie Coen. I'm a principal program strategy analyst here at National Grid. I focus on our Massachusetts program, which you'll likely recognize under the umbrella brand of Mass Save. And I focus on our residential rebates program, which includes our prescriptive heat pump program. So I know there's quite a few questions that I'm sure I've missed so far. So Dave, where do you want to start?
No, I think that handoff. Let's just continue with this line of this question around heat pump specific rates and what's the latest and greatest in Mass as far as that go, or at least just from the National Grid territory.
Sure. Yep. So speaking for National Grid, we are rolling out a heat pump rate in this winter. I am not exactly sure what the rate's going to be, but it will be obviously lower than the standard electric rate that customers are currently on. We do plan to auto enroll customers who we know have participated in our heat pump program. So they've received a rebate. We know, they're using their heat pump, for heating in their home, and they'll be auto enrolled. And we'll have to come up with a strategy to enroll customers, going forward onto that rate. And I do know, I don't want to speak for Unitil or Eversource, but I know that they either have rates or are working on heat pump rates.
Yeah.
But I won't.
Yeah, no, as far as some more recent research, we're seeing whether it's actual utilities that have heat pump specific rates in the field. A couple of them are in Maine, but seeing a lot of utilities being asked to explore these kinds of special heat pump user rates. So it does seem like we're likely to see a number of different territories and states adopting some form of this. And I know NEEP is actually working on a rates. Some colleagues are working on a rates paper as we speak. So more to come from NEEP on the rate space. Now that we have you, Melanie, I was pivoting to sort of the consumer education marketing question and wondering from your experience at marketing and communicating with consumers, what have you seen sort of message wise and information wise resonating with your consumers?
Sure. So I think this is a really good question. We are still doing some message testing, internally at National Grid and likely more on a statewide level. But, customer education, as I think we all know, is paramount to heat pump adoption. There's still a ton of misconceptions about heat pumps out there, in the world. Actually, over the last 3 years, we have done some direct email marketing that is really focused on myth busting, just really going back to the basics and, just busting those myths about that customers have, they believe, cold climate heat pumps don't work in the New England, temperatures. They won't adequately heat a home, which they do. As long as the system is installed correctly and sized correctly, of course. Heat pumps do heating and cooling. So really like back to the basics, and that's really resonated with our customers. Our direct emails that have this messaging have the highest click rates that we've seen, like by far internally. And I'll also mention, we're doing this also at a statewide level. We, at a recent Massachusetts Energy Efficiency Advisory Council, EEAC meeting, I facilitated a Q&A with a couple of heat pump installers, really just focusing again on some of these basic misconceptions. And I think I'm hoping it resonated with customers, hearing from, those, experts, the experts that are out in the field. They were speaking in layman's terms, and I just thought it was a really successful panel. And we've also, to kind of follow up on that, created a statewide myth-busting document that the council has actually posted on their website, and we will plan to use as well. I do have a link. I can throw it in the chat for folks to see. But again, just simple, and down to the point information.
Yeah.
And sorry, I know one more thing to say. I think we've said it, customer education is really important. We do offer no-cost virtual decarbonization consultations with our lead vendor, who's a BODE. These consultations are very popular, and we get really great feedback amongst the prospective heat pump customers. It's an opportunity for a customer to speak with someone who isn't in their home trying to sell them something. They can ask their questions, whatever they are. And there's a chance to revisit those conversations if and when they decide to move forward with their installation. So
exciting. Dana, I was going to pivot to a different question, but did you have from kind of a manufacturer standpoint any follow up on that question about what you I don't know if you're necessarily in the business of marketing, but do you have anything to add to the question around what resonates with customers in general and specifically in our region?
It's really about comfort. Incentives are interesting to people, knowing that they can have the protection of some sort of sense of confidence that contractors are going to behave well if their participants in the program is helpful. But ultimately, people are interested in comfort and security in their homes. And so having something that they know is going to work in all seasons, that's going to be dependable and quiet, is really key.
Beautiful. But I'm going to stick with you on this question around contractors. That's comes up a lot. Contractors sort of serving as the front lines of this market. Wondering kind of what's made the difference for successful heat pump installers in Mitsubishi's network, or you could speak more generally, but specifically based on your experience, what separates the good ones from the bad ones?
Yeah, so Mitsubishi has a network of several thousand diamond contractors across the country, and the thing, and it varies very much what happens in the regions or the kind of commitment from the contractors and the way that they approach the marketplace. But in the Northeast, our biggest contractors, and I think this is true across the programs, not just for Mitsubishi, but for other manufacturers as well. It's when the commitment is made to just jump into heat pumps with both feet. There are certainly plenty of contractors that do all manner of heating and cooling and electrical and generators and everything else. But the guys that do the vast majority of the work, most of the installs that are completed in the region, are those that do nothing but heat pumps day in and day out. And I think that that's been the case for a while. And I think there's some benefit to consumers if you list contractors by the number of projects they've completed in the last few months that are heat pump projects, so that they can identify people that are going to sell them heat pumps. I mean, we get stories, it happens even within our network of homeowners who want a heat pump, call up a contractor, and they come in and try to sell them a new furnace. It continues to happen. And so if we're going to make this transition, it's not that we don't want to encourage people for entering the marketplace, but we really want to make sure that we're not getting a bait and switch from people, where consumers are asking for heat pumps and trying to make that transition. So I think that providing elevated services for contractors that are committed to heat pumps only, or as Mass Save has done, make a heat pump leaders network, but there ought to be a commitment that when they get a call about heat pumps, that they're going to respond to that, or if they get complaints that they're being sold something besides heat pumps, that they wouldn't be able to retain that marking. So you know, that's a tricky spot.
Thank you. I might, Melanie, mash up a couple of these. One of the program trends that they had flagged in the report itself was this offering separate levels and more kind of robust incentives for systems solutions that were whole home versus more partial displacement. And I know there's a question in the Q&A around what that definition is and how you separate whole home systems from partial displacement. But what was my question? I guess how is that going for Mass Save, and what kind of breakdown have you seen recently in the adoption of that more robust incentive for the whole home solution versus the partial solution?
Sure. Yeah, just so everybody understands kind of how we delineate between the two. Whole home is when a customer is fully displacing their pre-existing heating system. Partial home is when they are partially displacing that pre-existing heating system and are installing an integrated control so that the two systems can work with each other. And I'm going to speak just for National Grid in terms of what we've seen. So in the last 3 years, we planned for about a 20-80 split between full and partial. So about 20% full, 80% partial. But what we ended up seeing in actuality is about a 50-50 split. In our electric program, which includes oil, propane, and electric resistance conversions to heat pumps, we saw more full displacements over the 3 years than partial. So a little bit, over that 50-50. We did learn that, given what we were seeing, especially on the gas side, where economically it's not always in the customer's best interest to go from gas to a heat pump, because we were seeing so many full home conversions or whole home conversions. We felt that we needed to maybe put some more control into the eligibility for that rebate. So starting in 2024, we started requiring the disconnection of the pre-existing heating system. There are various ways a customer can do this. And it's not to say that the customer, wouldn't go back and reconnect it, but they are signing an attestation, and so is their contractor, that it is disconnected. Even with that new requirement, we were still seeing quite a few whole home, and I do think it has to do with that $10,000 amount. It is very eye-catching, but we really, our goal is for customers to install these for heating purposes. That is, why we're offering so much money. And so we're really, we're keeping an eye on it. We don't want customers installing them, because they're getting an air conditioner for $10,000 discount. But we are, at the end of the day, these systems are going into customer homes, and hopefully they're using them for heating, but it's kind of that market transformation mindset, if and when they are ready. If they're not right now, they're there, and they can make that switch.
Great. I think we have time for just maybe one more question, and I know I sort of teed this one up for Emily earlier. I think you spoke to it a little bit in the talking about the action plan and how NESCAUM will be supporting states, but I just curious for your and anybody else's kind of thoughts on which of these opportunity areas lend themselves particularly to collaboration across states and programs and stakeholders. I'll let Emily just short answers at this point, but any thoughts on sort of things that really stand out as when it comes to easy and more impactful to collaborate towards?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that is focused on the supply chain, on manufacturers, distributors, retailers, even a lot of contractors that work across state lines. We have small states for the most part in our region. We have manufacturers and distributors that are working in multiple states. And to the extent we can be more consistent across states in both policy design and program design, things like program eligibility requirements. That's something that they appreciate. We're really excited about the New England Heat Pump Accelerator, which is a new effort that will be working to engage the supply chain through a more coordinated set of midstream incentives. And one of the other things the New England Heat Pump Accelerator is going to do is to try to elevate and increase the sharing across states of best practices. We also have a lot of common challenges here with an older housing stock, cold climate, so a lot of hydronic heating, boilers. So the types of installation practices and training needs and things like that there are a lot of common challenges that we can hopefully make faster progress by working together and lifting up the resources, even the kinds of myth busting resources that Melanie mentioned. We'll have a vehicle to share those across states and try to use them more widely when we find something that really works well. So those are some of the areas that we're trying to support in partnership with NEEP and others and the folks on the New England Heat Pump Accelerator and a lot of other partners.
Awesome. I think we're about time. I probably need to start wrapping up. I didn't want to cut off Dana or Melanie, but let's move towards wrapping up here. Big thank you guys for joining and providing some thoughts on this market and what opportunities for moving it forward. So thank you all. I see some questions in the Q&A. I would definitely point folks to the report itself. There should be answers to sort of the definitions of some of the things that I presented in my slides. So I know the link to the report itself is in the chat, and we'll have a link here as well. So I definitely encourage folks to, if you found anything interesting you wanted to dig in, the report has the details. I also did just want to flag that in parallel with the market assessment report, we did develop some best practice guides around various areas of program administration. So there's one on midstream program best practices, workforce development, and co-promotion of weatherization and heat pumps and other high performance HVAC. So I know some of the questions were around weatherization and the interplay between making homes heat pump ready. Have a look at the co-promotion piece because it gets into that question. Next slide. Here is the link to the report itself, and it's actually the web page where the other best practice guides are. You can use that QR code if that's helpful. I'll pause for 1 second before we go to the next slide. I think the next slide is about our work about NEEP's. Okay, ways of engaging the heating electrification initiative, which we have a subscription program for. So reach out to me and really anybody on our team about the heating electrification initiative. A lot of great benefits. We have a workshop coming up in the fall, and I shouldn't say obviously, but our product list is also one of our kind of flagship resources. We have our in-person heating electrification workshop, or HUE 2025, will be in Princeton, New Jersey this year, over the course of parts of 3 days, but the core workshop is a day and a half. And we would love to see all of you there to continue to collaborate and learn and be inspired and other good stuff and eat together, have some good food. Next slide. Okay, right on time. Thank you all again for joining, and thanks to the support team for making the webinar happen. And have a good rest of the week. Talk to everyone down the road. Thanks.
Thank you, NEEP.